The advice and opinions expressed by Dr. Grandpiche and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen, my son was recently diagnosed with autism with a 1-1. I watched your show, so I knew to ask for both numbers.
Right.
He will turn 5 this summer. We live in Philadelphia and had some difficulty finding ABA services, but we are about to start any day. But we just had our IEP, and the director of the special education assured us that ABA would be a waste of his time. I am so confused. He is supposed to start with 25 hours a week and ramp up to 30. Insurance has already approved it. The school recommended not doing any. What will my child miss if he doesn't do ABA? I want to ask, why would the insurance pay for 30 hours? 30 hours of anything if it's going to waste his time. But,
Yeah.
okay.
It just seems so incredible to me that the director of special ed would be so ignorant to what is actually out there. That's just upsetting, you know? So ABA is the treatment of choice for autism, and the fact that your child is so young and only minimally affected is fantastic, and I would probably say that 25, 30 hours is the right dosage depending on what your child's needs are. But absolutely prioritize ABA over anything else at this point, because what ABA does is that, and please find an ABA provider who can actually help with your child's issues. Because a second problem that parents of kids who are minimally affected by autism, a different problem that they experience is that a lot of ABA providers don't really know what or how to teach those individuals. What they tend to do is they tend to do the same kind of stuff that they would do for a child who is severely affected. And that's wrong. Like, you are teaching completely different things and you're teaching them completely in different ways as well. So I'll give an example. For a child who might be more severely affected, you're focusing on things like speech, basic communication of needs, things that the child would benefit from, because right now perhaps they cannot really express their own needs, they cannot perhaps take care of themselves, their daily living chores and tasks and so on. They can't really understand a lot of what's going on around them, and therefore they have learned to express their frustrations or their needs through challenging behaviors, and also maybe they have become somewhat isolated and they have a lot of what we call self-stimulatory, repetitive types of behaviors. An individual who's a 1-1, who's minimally affected, it very likely has speech and should now be working on cognitive concepts and more advanced communication or language, social language, social behavior, cognitive behavior, executive functions, things that are much more of an advanced nature. For example, how do I join a group of kids and interact with them without seeming different? Or, how do I interact with a group that's already talking about a subject, maybe a subject that I'm not interested in? How do I, there's a lot in communication, Shannon, we've spoken about this a lot of times before, where a child who might be a 3-3 and needs a lot of support is really just learning how to say things like, I want my drink, or whatever, very basic speech, whereas an advanced child or a 5-year-old who is minimally affected might be learning things like, how do I interact with one other person who I don't know very well? How do I interact with a group of 3 other kids who are talking about a subject that I know nothing about? How do I enter their group, introduce myself? How do I know how to repair the conversation if the conversation should go to a different topic? How do I know how to share, take turns? like a lot of much more abstract stuff, and that's just conversation.
Yeah.
There's things like social behavior, like how do I know by looking at someone how they feel and what they may have experienced, and how do I show sympathy towards that, and what are the right types of behaviors that I have in a classroom, let's say with a strict teacher as opposed to a not so strict teacher. There's just so many things, or cognitive and executive functioning skills, like, oh, I wonder why this person doesn't feel so good today, and how can I help them feel better today? And just, there's so many advanced skills that a 5-year-old of this nature would need to learn. A lot of ABA providers, unfortunately, aren't very familiar with those types of concepts, and they don't teach those types of things like perspective taking and understanding things from other people's perspective, and like there's just a huge amount of stuff. So I do recommend for parents who reach out to us, first of all, definitely get your 25 to 30 hours, extremely important. Prioritize it over school, over anything else, because your academic skills you'll have an opportunity to teach, to learn later. But what you will miss out on right now is teaching your child all the basic communication and social behavior that they need in order to be successful and in order to develop self-esteem in the school, amongst peers, and so on. And if you find an ABA provider who doesn't really seem to know a lot of this stuff, then go on our online on Skills, the platform that we built many years ago, and it has an incredible curriculum. And go in there and access the cognition, social, and executive functioning curriculum areas, and you'll see hundreds of lessons and lesson plans that will allow your child to really be taught the right things. And we've written out all of our lessons in very like ABA terminology, so any BCBA could jump in and understand the SDs, the instructions, and how they link to each other. So, but it is important to do that, because one thing you have to be wary of is you do not want to do rote ABA, which is appropriate for a child in the beginning of skills, because rote is very good for practicing new concepts, but not for a child who's this advanced, because they'll get bored and it'll be wasting their time because they're learning things that are too easy for them. So that becomes something to focus on.
Don't forget, you can watch Ask Dr. Doreen live every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We hope to see you there.